This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
How would you like to get more customers, make more profits, and have bigger breakthroughs? Get Doberman Dan's Profit Boosting Breakthroughs. Normally, this would cost you $98 per month, but right now, for listening to this show, he's giving you a free copy of his Doberman Dan letter. All you have to do is go to DobermanDan.com and sign up to get your free copy now.
Prepare yourself for the uncensored, nothing held back, no BS reality of how business and life really work. Doberman Dan is off the chain.
You're listening to the Off the Chain Show. Welcome back, Canine Crew, to another thrilling edition of the show. Guess what? We are picking up where we left off last week. We were talking to Michelle Spiva. Things were just getting deep, and we're about to get into some even deeper stuff in today's episode when she talks more about the self-publishing business and how she got started. So without further ado, here's Doberman Dan and Michelle Spiva for part 2 of the interview.
I mean, if I don't publish, I don't eat. And so you have to publish. And you have a lot of voracious readers out there who will consume what took you 3 months to come up with. They'll consume it in a day and then turn around and ask you, where's the next one? And have
love those people.
Yeah, I've learned to love them because they do keep the food on the table, if you will. But they are also not my nemesis, but they're also in that background, asking me and sending me notes all the time. So, right.
It's like a pest, right? It's like, okay, you just cut open a vein and bled for 3 months to produce this. And I just read it,
What else you got?
Evenings. Yeah, so give me something, bleed more for me.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a good thing because like now I'm really excited because of the fact that I can teach and educate my fans. I don't know about other readers, but I can teach and educate my fans on not etiquette, but just the way I need to be dealt with. So for instance, if I get one that's really, really going there, because you do get some that get really rabid and they don't think they're doing anything harmful. They just are so excited about the story and all of this, they bug you. And, so I've had to break it down. Honey bun, because I call my fans honey buns. Look, honey bun, do you realize I just pooped out immortality and I'm a mortal being? I'm going to need a minute. Something as simple as that snatches them back and says, okay, I'll wait.
That's right. I need a minute. I am, last time I checked, I'm mortal. So that's a great way to remind them.
Yeah, so it kind of works. But for the books, I was in, this is funny, having to try to tell this as fast as I can, but I was actually back in school again, going for another degree, because at that time, that's where my mind was.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry. This was before you became an indie author or after?
Before, yeah. Okay. Because I'm setting up why this is such a big deal for me. Going back to school, incurring more student loans. Oh my Lord. And because at that time, this is 2008-ish up till the 10. And I'm working on an advanced degree in psychology and all of that. And first of all, it's hard. At the time I was dating someone that had a very trying career, and thus it trickled down to me. And we had the way the program was, if you received stipends and you were, an assistant in the state school program, you couldn't work outside of that. And so much so that you signed something saying that if I receive these funds, this is my job outside of school. And so that meant that we really could not go and get jobs. But unlike the little kiddos that were coming straight out of college and still could get a little assistance from mom and dad, I had grown people's bills called a mortgage, car notes and stuff like that. And so I had to figure out a way to do it. And I think it was a cacophony of events that happened during like my second year. And it was a perfect storm. And I just sat down and I started angry writing, a horrific it was not even gender bending. It was gender unidentifiable. When I said gender, excuse me, genre. You couldn't tell where this book belonged. And so I was like, okay, it's just a fantastical little what if where I kill and resurrect my boyfriend at the time. And so like Adele is out, I think I'll Adele him, So I published, Dan, no joke, I published the book. I didn't know what I was doing. It took me like a month to write I think the book came out to 6,000 words, and you couldn't tell me I wasn't doing something because, come on, 6,000 words. People who have ever had to write a paper, no, 6,000 words, that's a lot.
That's a lot. That's right.
And so I put it up and struggled through. My cover was horrendous. No joke. I made the cover in PowerPoint. That's how bad it was.
The cover yourself.
Yes, yes. I made the cover myself. Today, from time to time, I still make my own covers, and people don't know the difference because, hey, we learn. Yes. So I put the book out. And
Kindle only, right? Not hard copy. Also, just Kindle.
I just did it in Kindle. Did it in Kindle. Because at the time, everybody was raving about putting out cookbooks. And I remember, I'm still entrepreneurial. I'm still trying to figure my way out online while I'm doing this. And so I was like, I'm not going to do a cookbook. I don't have time for that. And plus, that means I have to go to the store and buy food. What's food? So,
you probably have to cook too. And
yeah, I put the book out, and it was a horrific train wreck. And I had to go back because my numbers were wrong. I told JR that I made like 11 bucks my first month. No, I made 35. Whoa. And I was shocked because I got reviews like, if I could give a -5, I would. I had I had reviews like, train wreck, Lord help her. I had reviews of people saying things like, you got to read this. She was serious, and when I say it hurt my heart because, come on, let's face it, I'm in a degree program where I am able to articulate myself well, but fiction is a totally different thing. So anyway.
But you did it. The thing is, right now that just set you apart from like, I say the 99%, it's probably more like 99.99% of people who won't go through the pain of creating the first iteration of whatever it is, or the first draft or whatever. They won't even go through that pain, but let alone they ain't got the guts to put it out in the world either. You had the guts to do both. Of course, it wasn't, you didn't get the results you wanted, but obviously that was the first step you had to go through to get to where you are now. Yeah.
And that is one of the things that I find very fascinating in this business. As I said before, I am entrepreneurial, so I have the business side. It's not just me writing. I teach people how to write that aren't writers. I teach people who don't talk good how to put out a book. I teach them the good bones of the story. And I spend, when I'm in that mode, believe it or not, I spend more time begging people to publish than I do getting them to believe they can write.
Because the fear factor? Because the fear of what?
Yeah. Well, there's, let's say, I'm not going to go on the psychology bent, but there are some real fears and phobias. And everything is not a fear. Sometimes it's a phobia. And first I have to get the person to help me figure out if we're dealing with a fear or a phobia, because you'll approach them differently. So let's go with the easier one, the low-hanging fruit one real quick. A fear someone has is real. Something has happened to them where there is a trauma still within them, consciously or unconsciously, that is fighting, or in their world, it's actually like a defense mechanism to help them, but it's no longer serving them. So it's fighting them against getting out there to be seen. So some people say, oh, I have a fear of being seen. I have an imposter syndrome or something like that. And 9 times out of 10, it's not necessarily an imposter syndrome as much as it's something in your code that has happened to you that is warranted. Don't go out there. Unknown equals bad. And when you're getting on the world stage of publishing, it's kind of like disrobing and standing in front of the world for them to critique you.
That's a good analogy. Yes.
Yeah. And so we're dealing with that. Then there are some people that have a phobia. Now, this is the one that a lot of people deal with. And when I'm able to help them to know that this is a false imagination of what can happen to you, they move past it. And so, like I said, most people think they have a fear when they're not dealing with a fear at all. They're dealing with a phobia. So fear is attached to something, a real trauma that happened to you that you got to deal with to get over it so that you can get out there and publish. Most people are dealing with a phobia. A phobia is an irrational reason as to why you're scared of doing this because of what might happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys are tracking with me, think about all the stuff that people make excuses for of the reason why they're not doing it. And it's usually based on because something might happen.
That's right. It's like what all the people in the success movement teach us to do, the visualization. It's doing that in reverse. It's the negative imagining of the future.
Yeah. So it's very powerful either way. And once I can help this person see this was a phobia, the water is fine. There are no sharks in that water. And if you are a bigger shark, go out there and do it. That helps. And I think that's the reason why I went on and took the plunge, because I knew, first of all, nothing real had ever happened to me. Come on, my parents, when I was a little kid, I was in the choir singing, and I didn't think I was a great singer. So if I could sing in front of people, I could write a book. And getting out there and getting over the fact that those reviews, they cut, but they didn't kill me, was what I needed to help myself. And especially when it got to the point where I was teaching myself that I could do this, and I was finding that I was able to start making money, and it didn't matter, it didn't matter if I was in a certain clique, because you guys are really familiar with online stuff. And sometimes it comes down to getting in the right mastermind, getting in the right clique, to make the right connections, to get the right exposure, to get on the right affiliate list, to get on the right, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, that's right. Yeah, it's a clique. That's the perfect description of clique.
Yeah. And so when that was removed and realized, oh my goodness, I can write a book, put it out there. And then this was the big thing. And my customer service is handled by Amazon. I don't have to deal with returns. I don't have to deal with, I can't get my book downloaded. I didn't have to deal with that. That was amazing. So I started this journey in 2010. Now, I will say this. By the time 2013, 2014, I was really, into where you got to do your committees and your dissertation, all this kind of stuff. And it was becoming evident that I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to go down this educational path that was still more political bureaucracy that was killing me on the vine from corporate. It was just the same thing. Just instead of it being corporate, it was academic.
Mm-hmm.
I was making, I would say I was making probably around $500 a month on my books, which was a big deal. That was a big supplement to what I was doing. And it's a reason with myself, if I can just go on and devote time to this writing, I can make it. And so I quit school. And I remember I quit in 2014. I thought it was 13, but it was 14.
And you had how many years your life invested up to that point when you quit?
If I had to concentrate it, I would say almost 2, because, in 2010 is when I got the idea. I think I published, 2010 idea. I published my first one late 2011, 2012, built it up. And so probably time span 4 years, but concentrated effort, maybe almost 2 years. But it was enough for me to take the plunge, because remember, I knew that I was entrepreneurial. I knew that I was a business person, an investment type of person. And I knew I was in love with the idea of leverage, with the idea of working once and then reaping the benefits of that work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All those different things that we learn along our own journeys. And so that was enough for me to get over any fears, phobias, apprehensions, anything that would deter me from doing it. And it was the best thing I did. I remember my family once again, because in 2008, they told me, oh my gosh, you're going to lose your house. And then in 2014, when I was like, I'm not doing this anymore, they were like, oh my God. Not only are you going to lose your house, but you're going to be disgraced publicly,
Did they know what you were quitting the academic world for? Because I'm sure that reaction was less than positive too.
Oh, yeah. And that's why I became the should we commit her conversation. Seriously. Yeah. Yeah.
You and I have something in common then.
I'm a 6-figure earner of an indie publisher now, and I still have certain members that when they see me, they'll say those things like, the post office is still hiring.
When are you going to get a real job, Michelle?
Yeah. And they think that I just do what I want. Now, I will say this. I quote unquote do what I want, but my boss, she does not play. She is all about me making goals, deadlines, and doing what I need to. And so the good thing about all of this, and thank you so much for letting me just ramble about, but the good thing about this is...
Oh, I'm finding this fascinating. So it's not rambling to me. Keep going.
I found that blessings, and JR, maybe you'll appreciate this. I'm in this point where I am understanding something different about what we call blessings. And I am blessed. I am so blessed. For one, blessings are really slick. And this is regardless of whether you have a faith or you're an atheist or whatever. You do operate in blessings. And
are you, let me interrupt. Are you blessed because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we can make a list of material things or good things that are happening right now? Or are you blessed because you made the decision to feel blessed?
Okay, so we're going down the existential route, I see.
Yes, please.
Both tangible as well as a euphoric feeling. But what I was going to say is, and JR will tell you, I'm never probably going the way you think I'm going with these. For me, being quote unquote blessed is an instrument of, I'll say it like this. It's an instrument of encouragement to do what your heart's desire wants you to do. And what I mean by that was, I used to quantifiably count blessings. I used to say, oh, I'm so blessed because I have, I do, I am, those types of things, right?
I still do that. Just being transparent with you. Yes, I get it.
And like I said, I'm on this journey. And so, and we need to do that. Studies have shown having an attitude of gratitude and being thankful for what you have, who you are, and what you do helps you. At this particular juncture in my life, though, I am noticing that blessings are really slick because they'll be here. The stuff that you have hoped for, longed for, even prayed for will be upon you. And you won't even notice it. Have you ever had that happen?
That has happened, yes.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, why, for me, why is it that they're so slick and that it takes me time to sit down and think about them so I can be grateful for them? Why are these little buggers so, covert?
Right, yeah, right. Why don't they arrive with a fanfare and a marching band and they bashing your front door as I'm here?
Yeah. And so at this time, I am personally learning that blessings are an instrument to show me or give me direction on, yes, this is what you should be doing. They are kind of like a power level up. Okay, this is here. So now you need to be doing this. And the funny thing, and JR and I have had this conversation before, in my culture, we call when you get a blessing, it's always got that little back part to it. We call it new level, new devil, meaning that, okay, you finally got to this level. Now there are new devils or little things that you have to deal with. And for me, those blessings let me know that, okay, I can deal with this. This is an indicator that I'm on the right path and that I'm doing the right thing. And so I have learned and continue to learn right now, if I needed to, recap and sum this up, is that my blessings are not just for me to count them, not for me just to be grateful. My quote unquote blessings or anything I feel blessed to have is an indicator that I am on this, going back to the existential side of it, on the right path, doing what will give me the greatest amount of joy, as well as leaving other people better than I found them. And to me, that has an altruistic bent that I can deal with, because I'm getting something out of it. So now I expect blessings, because if I'm doing stuff, blessings are there to give me a wink. You're doing the right thing. Keep going.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anybody articulate that blessings are not just to be counted and be grateful for. Blessings are also direction, confirmation and direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so that's the thing. You should have an expectation of quote unquote blessing. And if we want to, we can call them incentives. We can call them cosmic incentives if you want to go that route.
Yeah, whatever somebody's more comfortable with. That's cool.
Yeah. And so, like I said, when And Dan, I really believe in the seasonal rule of life, that you do have seasons. I do believe that there is a season for sorrow and a season for happiness. I believe all of that. But even in those, you still have these little blessings. And for some people, just even getting to the point where they can start to count them is a big deal. So I believe, yeah.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, so I believe that even if I can just get people to start being able to count them, because, they, like I said, they're covert, they're sneaky. So sometimes it takes a different eye, a different perception and perspective of your world to even be able to see them. And it's funny, because the more you start to see them and be able to count them, the more they come. And then hopefully, and I'm not saying I have arrived or awakened or any of this stuff. I'm just saying for my journey of what I'm doing as a self-published indie author out there making it every day, is that they come and they're like, okay, so you did this. This is your incentive, your reward, your grace, if you will, the grace to go on and endure something else. Because if you made it this far, that little thing that you wrote down 2 years ago that you want to achieve, you can see it a little more clearly, can't you? So keep going, because there'll be another or a new one of me on that one. And so it helps to build, I believe, hope and all of these things that keep us going. Because there was, and I'm going to switch real quick here. There was this book I read, Simon Sinek. Oh my gosh, I'm about to murder the hits, JR, with me and my books.
I always forget book titles, even books I've read multiple times for some reason.
Yeah, it is like the bane of my existence. Simon, and I always mess this guy's name up. Sinek. Simon Sinek. Yeah, Simon Sinek, in his famous book on why. So anyway, what I was going to say about that is that when I was looking at this whole journey, because, it's just really a journey of what I was going to do with my life and how I settled on the storytelling element of what I do, I had to get this why. Now, like I said before, as a single female, and I have relatives, but I don't have, the children and all of that kind of stuff. My why was a little harder to find. And maybe this might help someone listening today, because a lot of people, when they're out there doing their hustle or whatever they're doing, they have a why. And it's these little hungry, little tax deduction blessings called children. And, they want,
like Jonathan and Cupcake now have. Yes,
exactly. Cutie little pie there. And so that's a good incentive for them to have a good reason as to why they get up every day and do what they do. But what about that person who either their kids are grown, they're stable, or they're non-existent, or, they don't have that spouse or somebody depending on them. It's just you. This was really powerful for me. psychology wise, they used to say that the biggest indicator of why someone does something is so that they can prove other people wrong. That even overwrote the need to take care of your family. So it used to be, I'm going to do this because I want to prove you guys wrong. Now I am looking at the fact that when I am looking at the why for why I do something, it is more based in my pursuit of finding the right path for me, because it's getting to the point now where the zone, and I'm not cheeks on men cheeks. Oh, another one. I'm okay. I'm not going to even say his name, but he was the one who came up with this whole idea of being in the zone. And I believe that when I was reading that book from Simon Sinek on the question of why, and then why we do what we do and having a good one, I'll start with why is the name of the book. Okay, just remember that. The book is Start With Why. I really believe that I had to go through those iterations of trying to prove myself, doing it to prove myself. And then I started moving into it's not about proving anything. It's not about loving myself to do for me what I would be willing to do for somebody else. No, it's about getting into flow, because in flow state, there is this awesome high. I'm just going to be honest. And I know that you guys have felt that high. When you're in the zone and everything is clicking and you're doing stuff that used to reside in either the periphery of your mind or in the what if ether of your ideas, and now you're doing it. And it feels so good, and you're in this flow. I'm
totally resonating with it. You're taking things from the supernatural and bringing them into the natural. What existed in the ether or in the depths of your mind is now coming to life at your fingertips. And holy smokes, 3.5 hours have gone by. It seems like about 30 minutes.
Yeah. And I really believe that is one of the core components of the entrepreneurial heart, that we're secretly, subconsciously, or even overtly looking for our flow. I make this joke with myself. I call it my good. I'm like, what am I doing that's going to get me into my good? I need my good. And so at this particular time, it's being able to create these fantastical things. One of my sisters, she shakes her head every time she thinks about what I do for a living. And she says, because she sees, the book sales, and she's like, oh my gosh. And she says, do you realize you created money out of thin air? I was like, yeah. And she's like, no, I don't think you get it. She says, I have to go to work every day. She says, you sit down, come up with a freaking idea, and then people pay you for it. I was like, yeah, that's the creative process. And
that's an accurate description. You create money out of thin air.
And her mind, she was just blown by that. Now this was one of the ones that was like, Walmart is hiring. But when I finally convinced them that, I was going to be okay, it was different. So I know I went all around the mulberry bush with that, but that's where I am right now.
This has been really interesting. We don't have a lot of time left, but I want to go back to something you said earlier about, so you grew up in the South. Mm-hmm. All right. You're a Black woman. You described it as a narrative. The narrative you grew up hearing. I myself, so I would use a different word. I would call it conditioning. I can never, ever claim to know what it feels like to be a woman. That's for sure. I can't ever claim to know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of prejudice and racism. Well, I felt it a little bit when I lived in Costa Rica. It was different. But I did grow up with a conditioning that I'm Barberton, Ohio, white trash. And, this is as good as it's ever going to. We're broke. Okay. It's as good as it's ever going to get. That's your fate in life. You grew up with a different conditioning, but it certainly was not. I'm not talking about from your parents, by the way. I'm just talking about society in general. It certainly wasn't a positive conditioning. How did you overcome that?
Well, I do have to give a shout out to my parents. If you've listened to my podcast, I talk about them. They've influenced me so much, just even in the word choices I use and how I go about life. So they were always teaching me as best they could what they had to work with. Things like leave people better than you found them. And things like when you walk into a room, things should get better. Understanding that my emotions are one of the things, and my not only my emotions, but my emotions and what I can think, what I can know, and what I can do out of that knowing is something that can never be repossessed or foreclosed on. Those are some of the things that they taught me. And being the person that I was, having these natural desires to not have to work for others, being able to have my own destiny, if you will. Sometimes they were at a juxtaposition to what this conditioning or narrative, if we're, bantering words around meant. So to answer your question, it was a journey because I make this joke, and JR has heard me say this for a while. I'm one of those Black women that, I'm Black from afar. There's no, there is no guessing, if you see me 100 yards away, you'll say, "Oh, that Black girl over there." Yeah, you know. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because I'm from Louisiana, and this has nothing to do with anything about narratives. But what I'm going to say is, in my family, I have siblings that could be confused for other race mixtures, if you will. And so that was also a play of what I needed to do. One of the breakthrough things for me was the ability to grow through other people's experiences. And I did that by, guess what? Reading. My mom would take us to the library. I remember growing up, and we would go, our little library in Louisiana, I could call the city's name, but I'm not going to do that, had, do you remember the little AV labs? And you could check out, I don't know, maybe it's just us with our geekiness, but you could check out these reel-to-reel phonics and diction tapes.
Heck yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, so she would take us to the library on the weekends, and we would check those out. And she would make us listen to the different dialects from the regions and then the proper way to pronounce something.
Oh, wow.
And she told us, she says, even the way she named us, different little things that our conditioning taught us for offensive moves, like your name, the way you speak, and those types of things, so that you didn't get pigeonholed into that conditioning or that narrative. And so growing up from there, and even the little riddles that she would tell us, like my grandmother asking us, what is the most expensive real estate in the world? And the answer being the 6 inches between your ears, your brain. Knowing that once I put something in there, as long as the good Lord blesses me to be able to retrieve it, it can never be stolen from me. It can never be foreclosed or repossessed. It's in there, and I can use it. And so those were the groundworks for what I did. Now, as you have gleaned through our conversation, I have one of my backgrounds is in psychology, and I'm always into thought behavior. I'm always into that because I really believe the mind is a frontier. I believe it just as tangible on some level as the things we can touch and see. And so because of that, I was always looking for what was going on. And I want to bring up a lady that maybe some of your listeners might be interested in learning more about. But her name is Dr. Joyce DeGruy, and that's spelled DeGruy. And Dr. DeGruy, I got to give it to her. She was the one who helped me to get myself together in 2008 when I was, crying and slinging snot about I can't go back to work. I'm going to cut my wrist if I do, and all of this stuff. And now I will say her work is very polarizing, and it's polarizing because it affects everybody, but it's warranted. And so her biggest study is called post-traumatic. Are you ready for this? Post-traumatic slave syndrome. So instead of PTSD, it's PTSS, post-traumatic slave.
This is interesting. Is this the name of her book, or is this just the thing she teaches?
She teaches it in the name of her book. So she teaches it to like folks like me who had to deal with people. You know, if you were going to be a therapist or counselor and you're trying to deal with different ethnicities and different people in different areas, and you're seeing certain traits and stuff that we might say, oh, that's part of our culture, but it might be a manufactured thing of part of the culture. Anyway, I started, studying that just for my own personal benefit. And it opened up so many things for me to see, not only from within my culture, but within our world of dealing with people. So much so that, like I said before, remember I told you I have a lot of guys that get on my romance list?
That doesn't surprise me, Michelle.
Well,
I imagine sometimes it's a little creepy, right?
No, it's not. It really isn't, because I'll tell you, a lot of my male students that I teach, they always want me to teach them how to write romance, and they're really good at it.
Also, they're not stalker creepy.
No.
Okay.
I've been blessed. I haven't had that. But I send out that vibe, don't try me too.
I'm picking up on that nobody wants to mess with you. I get it.
Yeah. So, I think that helps too. But the short of that story of my interaction with Dr. Joy DeGruy, and one of these days I'm going to meet her and be able to just hug this woman, because she helped me so much. She helped me to get under and over, because you not only need to understand stuff, and this is one of my little nuggets that I am constantly reminding myself of. I don't need to just understand something. I don't need to be under it. I need to also be able to overview it, be over it. And so that helps me to get a bigger perspective of what I'm dealing with, because if I'm so understanding something, under it, the weight of it, and trying to, get a feel and a grasp for my world that, I'm on the defensive, that's not going to help me to make inroads. So I need to get over it as well, so that I can see it from that aerial view and shrink it down to size where it's manageable in my mind. So, understanding and overviews, those are really big for me.
That makes a lot of sense. Is Dr. Joy DeGruy, is she African American?
She is.
Okay. I find this topic fascinating because, so there's generational things that are passed on. Mm-hmm. And, whether people think they're passed on or not, and I'm not talking about, stuff like I picked up from my dad. I'm talking about, let's go back 4 or 5 generations, that is still being passed on. And, there's the old story about, you put 5 monkeys in a cage, and put these bananas at the top. And every time they run up to get the banana, you squirt them with a hose. Okay. And every time, so they're getting this negative reinforcement and the trauma of that. And then, so take one of the monkeys out, replace them with a new one who has no frame of reference for this. And as soon as he sees the bananas, the other monkeys start trying to pull him back down. Long story short, I know you've probably heard this before, Michelle, but when all the original monkeys have been replaced and none of the 5 monkeys remaining have ever experienced the trauma of getting, the negative blast of the hose for trying to get the bananas, they still won't go after the bananas, and they'll still try to pull other new monkeys down when they try to get the bananas. So there's some weird generational stuff that gets passed along. I don't know what it is in the brain and the DNA or something. That's why I find that.
It's called epigenetics.
Epigenetics. Okay.
Yeah, epigenetics. And the studies have proven that you can pass, just like you can pass, medical issues down.
Mm-hmm.
You can pass trauma down. You can pass behaviors and beliefs down through the DNA. And like I said, it's called epigenetics. Now, epistemology looks at what is clicked on and off. So how can you have siblings, for instance? 6 siblings, 2 of them are fine and 4 of them get cancer. that looks at the epistemiology of it, the study of why did these genes get clicked on in some of the kids and not in the others. But when you're looking at the whole of epigenetics, and I mean, I'm really simplifying it here. It goes way more into this.
Well, you have to for me. Please. Come on. Barberton High School graduate, and I barely made it through that.
Well, that's totally fine. But when you're looking at that, it is a real thing. So to answer, your question, we look at it as, crabs in the barrel behavior and all of that. When I was looking at PTSS, which it's not just for people of the generations of people who were born out of are descendants of slaves, it gives an answer for a nation. I remember having to do some research on apartheid and all of those types of things that were going on when I was dealing with, like the social aspects of dealing with people in trauma as a therapist. And because, that was a great study. And then superimpose it on where we live in the United States. And Dr. DeGrew really helped in that. She's like, it's not just black faces or brown faces. It is everyone. Everyone was traumatized. Everybody was traumatized, and we deal with it in different ways because our epigenetics were passed down to us to deal with it in different ways. And so because of that, now I'm going to say this, and this is going to really flip your script. In my books, I have these little rules and boundaries that I like, and my fans all know this. In my books, my heroines, my females, are always women of color. They don't just have to be black. They can just be women of color. And the reason why is because we're underrepresented in this genre. So people know when you pick up Michael Daniel's book, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get a woman of color. But the man, they can be anything. And a lot of times I like to make them alien. I know that sounds crazy.
I like it.
But I make them alien. You know why? Because they are not confined to the epigenetics of our world. And so I can make them more believable that any woman could fall in love with any man because I remove some of those rules to make them free. Now, if I'm just talking numbers, my readership of my loyal fans, the numbers keep going up, by the way. My female readership is such that I am almost into the 90 percentile of what we would call Caucasian white.
Interesting.
And
not what I would have guessed.
And the reason, and I asked them, because I try to poll them, and I'm like, because I make sure they know what the females like, and the generic answer that I get is, your characters are me. And like I said before, and it is because I'm getting beneath all of this surface stuff and really dealing with what we deal with, not just as female, black, white, or other. I am dealing with what makes us want to get into the zone, what makes us seek that place that will get us into our own personal bliss. And it resonates with people, whomever they may be. And like I said before, I didn't, sometimes it's sad when you're sick and you don't know you're sick, and so you infect other people. That was one of the big ahas and thank yous I do have for my formal education, because they were always making us do our work to make sure that wounded healers don't bleed on the wounded. You have your scars, but don't bleed on the wounded. And so taking that into what I do for a living now, I am not just edutaining. I'm not. I am helping people to be able to deal with their emotions, being able to help them do what they need to become better and to find their bliss, to get into their zone. And so when we go back to conditioning and all this kind of stuff, first and foremost, I understand that there is only one race. And that's not a cliche. That is scientific. Each person is 99.99999% identical. That 0.1 millionth is the only difference we have. That is why anybody can give somebody, potentially give someone an organ or blood transfusion or any of that kind of stuff, because we're all the same. So when I pull up to that overview that we talked about, so that part I just talked about is understanding. Now, when I look at the overview and I see all these little people down there, it's hard to distinguish who is whom, but I do know I'm dealing with humans with hearts and who have desires that they are willing to pay for the experience of experiencing love, understanding, and enlightenment, and even inspiration to do stuff that they didn't know they could do. I do little things like my characters, my females, they can't work for anybody else. If I start them off with a job, they soon get fired. That's just one of my rules. And I find cool little ways to give them new jobs that they can do themselves, so they can create themselves. That don't cost much to get started. You would be amazed at how many women have sent me messages like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that was a thing."
How cool! So in you're teaching, you're getting a message across at the same time you're entertaining. I love it.
Yeah.
So I owe you an apology. I kept you longer than I said I would, but I've been having a good time.
That's fine. And I'm hoping you can edit this down to find something good out of it that you can use.
Oh, it's all good. We're going to use it all. And I'm going to ask you, because I actually still have a whole sheet of questions I would ask you. I didn't get. So I'm going to ask you to come back. Will you come back, please?
Yeah, I've got a book due this week.
Okay, I'll make sure we book it during a time when you're not on a deadline or promoting a book.
Well, no. How about this? Because I'm always writing a book and I'm always promoting one. I will make this a priority, because I really appreciate you having me on and just even listening to me ramble about.
Oh, I've been fascinated by it. My only regret is we don't have any more time.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been a pleasure being here. And I really thank your listeners if they're listening to this too.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate it. We'll look forward to another show from you, because we got you recorded saying that you're going to do it. So now you got it.
She's locked in. Michelle, if people want to find you, maybe it's not so much a website, but do you want to give your pen name where they can pick up your books, or how do you want to do it?
Oh, okay. My pen name is Michael Daniels, but it's not spelled like the traditional Michael. It's actually spelled like Michael out of the Bible. So it's Mychal Daniels with an S on it, Michael Daniels. And you can go to michaeldaniels.com for my books. You can find me on Amazon, not YouTube, Amazon, and all the other major retailers like Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and stuff like that.
And we can't neglect to promote the Epic Story Lifestyle podcast here on the Podcast Factory.
Yes, coming back soon.
Also, are you still, because I know you've been teaching people to do what you do. Do you still do that, or is that on hiatus?
You know what? I keep saying I'm going to put it on hiatus, and then I get a lot of people saying, please. So, yes, I do teach people, and I've got a new one coming out. If you go on Facebook and just look for Fiction Story Muse, there's a group, and there's a fan page that you can find more information at Fiction Story Muse, and it's fictionstorymuse.com as well.
Nice.
Cool. Sounds good.
Thanks, Michelle. We'll talk again soon, and thank you, Dan.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. It was fun. Thanks.
Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to create rivers of revenue from your existing customers, then the next thing you need to do is go to DobermanDan.com. He's giving away a free copy of his $98 per month Doberman Dan letter just for listening to the show. Go to DobermanDan.com now and sign up for your free issue.
This is the podcastfactory.com.